I think we all make mistakes. I think all of us do at the zoo. I'm certainly not the only one. And I know for a fact that I am, from experience, that I'm harder on myself than I am on any of my coworkers for making mistakes. So,
That's an interesting point.
yeah. So I should probably cut that out and not hold myself to a different standard.
Yeah. Hey everyone! Greetings and thank you for tuning in to RAA Talks. We're so excited to have you back. And if you're joining for the first time, my name is Raihana, like rye bread, and I'll be your host. I've got a great guest for you, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. We've got Becky Yandrasitz. Becky, tell me if I said that right, your last name.
Yep, Yandrasitz.
Yandrasitz. Becky is an assistant zookeeper and education specialist at a zoo in Washington State. Becky had a rough start with chronic illness, delaying her education throughout her early 20s. And Becky had, even though that happened for her, Becky had always known since she was a child that she wanted to work with animals. Becky, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I first wanted to start off, how's it going today? How's your day been?
It's been going pretty good. It's my weekend, so just getting stuff done around the house.
So awesome. Yeah, it's a little strange. Like, you mainly work when it's the normal weekend for people.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
how is that like an adjustment for you to have like a Monday, Tuesday be your weekend?
Well, it's helpful for things like doctor's appointments and some errands, but then most of my friends work Monday through Friday, so social aspects can be difficult.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. That like you mentioned, doctor's appointments, like you don't have to take time off for work,
handy,
so that's super helpful. Super helpful. So what are you looking forward to in our conversation today?
Oh gosh, I mean, I've never been on a podcast before, so I guess I'm just looking forward to sharing my experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm super excited. Like I say with many people we interview, it's usually the first time for most folks. So you're going to be in great hands, and we're just going to have a really nice free-flowing conversation. How does that sound?
Great. That sounds great.
Awesome. So before we dive into the nice taboo topics, I'd like to lighten it up a little bit. And for you, Becky, I thought we could start with first, what inspired you to become a zookeeper?
Oh man, well, I've always loved animals. I was the kid who brought home I found a frog, or this bird fell out of its nest, can I keep it and raise it? I found the weirdest one was definitely I found a snake that had been run over in my neighborhood, and I thought at the age of I think 6 that I knew cross stitch, so maybe I could sew it back together and be okay. And my mom had to very gently be like, no, that's honey, no.
Wow.
But so
well,
I didn't
first of all,
know.
cross stitch at the age of 6. I had to take a minute to process that. Wow, that's crazy.
I wasn't good at it. I used the giant squares, and I made very sloppy things. But yeah, my cousin cross stitched and my aunt, and they taught me at family reunions. And I thought I could translate that into suturing, I guess. It's probably the same. Kind of.
Y'all, Becky was a really creative 6-year-old, so we're just going to learn more about how that creativity overflows into her life. Okay, go ahead, continue.
So I think it was when I watched Gorillas in the Mist, the story of Diane Fossey going into the wild and studying gorillas, and that's when I knew I wanted to work with animals. And I did not know what form that would take. There were years where I definitely wanted to spend time in the wild doing behavioral research. That was a dream of mine. Opportunities for that are few and far between, but I actually did do a short program through the University of Washington. I got to spend a few weeks in Indonesia doing some work, and it was just for my education. It's not research that went anywhere, but it gave me that experience, and I'm forever grateful for that. I did some wildlife rehab, but then I ended up at my zoo, and I love it so much. And I remember just how big an impact it had on me as a child, and just the journey that zoos have had from from a really rough and unethical place to being just institutions of education and conservation. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Wow, that's so cool. So you knew what you wanted to do was work with animals, but somehow in between you became a zookeeper. But my question would be, how did you not land on veterinarian, for example? Because you were talking about wanting to take care of these injured animals and everything. That seemed like a natural path. What made you divert to zookeeper specifically?
The first thing was because I had so much chronic illness, it took so long just to get my basic degree, and I was I was ready to go into a career. I felt like I'd lost too much time and I was behind all of my peers. So I immediately jumped into internships rather than looking at more schooling. But there's also just vet work is so hard because sometimes you can't help the animal and then you have to deal with the grieving families. And I have so much empathy for vets. And I don't know how well I'd be able to do that. Like, there's definitely the happy times when you can really make a difference and help, but I mean, most of what you're seeing is a lot of you've got regular checkups, but then you've got injuries and illnesses and cancer and just
Oh, yeah. That sounds rough.
and after I found my zoo, I decided, that could have been a path I was thinking maybe go back to school, become a vet tech, but I've
Mhm.
never wanted to leave where I am since I got there.
So cool. So then the
Yeah.
internships you had, were they at actual zoological parks?
Yes, they were. One was at my actual zoo that I am still
How
at
fun.
today in Washington State.
Wow.
The other was at Paws Wildlife Rehab, which was that was so rewarding. I mean, it's a lot of hard stuff like vets, but just the success stories of getting those animals back into the wild, like
That sounds super exciting.
it was
Oh,
wonderful.
I thought you were going to say it was hard because
It
sometimes
was,
you might
I
not
mean,
be able to successfully do it,
yes,
right?
yes. It's difficult work, but it's so, yeah, I have so much respect for wildlife rehabbers who just do their best and resist a lot of urges. Because you know what? I worked with baby squirrels and we were not allowed to talk to them or cuddle them, and for good reason. You don't want them to get used to humans because then they'll become pest animals. Like, for example, if a raccoon starts like hanging out with people, it's going to start raining trash cans, and some people aren't going to like that. And often
Yeah.
what happens in the case of raccoons is they put out poison and then all of your neighborhood cats start dying. So there's a lot of reasons,
Oh my
mostly
God.
people related, why you want wild animals not to be affectionate with humans. But man, it's hard when you're working with baby squirrels and you're just like, there's this tiny baby squirrel that I'm bottle feeding, and they're like, don't baby talk to it. I'm like, oh. Not that that was the hardest part of the job, but I'm just saying, oh, that's a big one.
You know what's interesting? You just brought up a point when they said, don't baby talk to it. It made me just think for a minute, how much was that baby squirrel able to process and really comprehend what you were saying to it that it would have affected it?
I mean, it wouldn't have been comprehending the words, but I think just getting it comfortable with human touch and voices is the concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just that
So,
basic affection. How interesting.
yeah. So, I mean, I got it. It was all very logical and reasonable, and people should let wildlife be wild.
That
But
makes
they're
total sense.
very cute.
They're very cute and they
They're
have
very
their
cute.
purpose. So we need to let them be and do their purpose at the same time.
Yes.
Sounds like you face, some challenge there with like your love for animals, with also wanting to do what's right for the animals so they can be themselves in the wild.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a challenge. It was like, oh, shucks, I'd love to cuddle that baby raccoon a whole bunch, but
Yeah.
can't do it. Not that I like go and cuddle a tiger at the zoo or anything, but I'm at least I'm allowed to talk to them, and I do a lot.
Wow. And what is that experience like?
Well, half the animals just kind of like, I don't know what you're saying, just feed me and go away. And then the other half are like, will respond to your voice, which can be very good. Forming a bond with zoo animals is actually incredibly important because the more comfortable they are with you, the more they will be receptive to veterinary visits, the more they'll trust you to handle them if they are injured or sick. So it is actually not just I get to talk to the animals, it's really important that I establish that bond.
Sounds more like what people go through when they're building relationships with their pets. Like it's about developing this trusting relationship. So it's like you can kind of depend
It
on one
is.
another to some extent.
I would say it is a similar process. It's just you gotta be careful. Like, we always know these are not our pets. They are not
Yeah.
here for
Yeah.
our emotional happiness. We are here for theirs, and that is
Absolutely.
an important distinction. We want them, like for pets in your home, you can humanize them if you'd like to, as long as that makes them happy. That's great. And for these animals, we want to make sure that we are encouraging their natural behaviors, their natural instincts.
Yeah.
We want them to have as close a life as they can to what it would be in the wild.
That sounds amazing. And it sounds like you're doing revolutionary work at the zoo you're working at, because you were saying earlier, we're trying to, like, zoos have come a long way in being like unethical and having like not the best experience for animals. And like what you're describing sounds like you're just like a game changer for the zoo that you're at. And
I mean, I think not me personally. I think that's all zoos and aquariums right now, or at least there's always going to be some like roadside attractions or some for-profit ones that you gotta look closely at. But I will say, for most zoos and aquariums, that's just standard now. People don't necessarily realize that, but we don't do it to make money because most of us are at nonprofits. So we put in a lot of hours. It's a lot of physical labor, but ideally all animals would be in the wild. But, well, I will give a good example here. The Spix macaw went extinct in the wild for over 10 years. And just a couple years ago, people were able to put it back in the wild because we had species survival programs and we were breeding them in zoo settings. It's important that we have these endangered animals in some cases just to make sure that they don't disappear. And another thing is that, and this is actually a quote we have up on at our zoo, but people take care of what they love. And I know when I was a kid going to these zoos and seeing these animals and learning how amazing they were, it made me care and change. I don't even remember what zoo it was, but I was a teenager and I went and I read about palm oil and how it devastated tiger habitats. And from that day, so for like 20 years now, I check my groceries and I try to reduce that impact. So I think that zoos are an amazing vehicle for teaching people these things and making them care enough that they want to make those differences.
That's such an interesting fact. Thank you so much for sharing all of that great information. It's like having like a little mini education session with a zookeeper one-on-one. How cool.
I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah, no, it's so awesome. Thank you so much. And you were just talking about how much physical labor goes into your work. So I wanted to transition to one of our topics that talks about physical labor specifically. And I mentioned, you spoke to me about menstruation and how that can impact your work. So I'd love to hear your experience about how do you manage menstruation symptoms while working in such a physically demanding role that's kind of nonstop.
Yeah, I luckily, because of the birth control I am on, it has reduced my period, so I'm thankful for that. But yeah, it's not fun with menstrual cramps, but I will say there is some truth to, like, if you're doing exercise, it can make them less. So I feel like they haven't been quite as bad after a couple years of doing the physical labor because my body's more used to it. And I will say my zoo handles it well. Like, we can tell people, I mean, it's not just menstruation, like, I'm not feeling good, can you help me out with this? And we have a great team, everyone's great with it. We don't have, I mean, not quite half the staff are guys, and we just keep period products in the shared bathroom. There's no commentary or toxicity about it. So I know
that's nice.
Yeah, I know that's not true other places.
Yeah.
So I am appreciative of my team.
That's super helpful. Yeah, and you mentioned, and I'm not sure how comfortable you're going deep, so if you're not comfortable, just let me know. But I heard you mention since you started taking this specific birth control, your periods have been a lot less frequent.
Yeah.
And the symptoms have reduced. Could you tell us a little bit more about what encouraged you to opt to take that birth control to kind of manage your symptoms?
So I used to be on the pill, and I was just so sensitive to the medication that if I didn't take it at the exact same time, I would start bleeding the next day. And I was put on the pill from a young age because the women in my family have such terrible cramps. So that was a way to try to mitigate that and make me more functional during that time of the month.
Right.
But it just didn't work because, especially when I was in my 20s, I was in college and also working a job that sometimes I'd be working until the midnight. So I couldn't take it every day.
Yeah.
Currently, I have the Mirena implant. I had tried the arm implant. It just didn't work for me. So I was looking for something where I don't have to remember a regular thing because that just makes my life easier. But I did try going off for a while, and yeah, the boys in my family are just bad. We are cursed.
Oh my God. Wow, that sounds awful. I know a woman when I was in, I knew her since high school, and I remember she had really intense cramps, like to the point where it was debilitating. She couldn't even walk, and she had to leave the classroom that day, and she had to go to the nurse and couldn't move. And it's just increased. And she got even to the point later in her late 20s where she wouldn't get a period for 3 months. And then all of a sudden she gets one and she's bleeding for 14 days. And then again, doesn't get it for 2 months. And then bam, comes and it's bleeding
Yeah.
nonstop. And then she had to like go on the pill. So I think like it's a really interesting topic that you mentioned, like using contraception to manage menstruation and symptoms, because sometimes we
Yeah.
get this misconception, oh, it's because you're trying not to get pregnant. You're really trying just not
Yeah.
to get pregnant, right?
I was on it long before I had any kind of that activity. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and it was very helpful for me.
Oh yeah, totally. And I know when she started doing that kind of, birth control types of stuff, and she had more regular periods, so it kind of just helped her to be regular, which was
Yeah,
as important as having like regular bowel movement. But you don't
it
think about it.
is.
You're like, okay, yeah, it's a period. It's supposed to come. But for some people it's not that seamless. Like it does
Yeah,
create more complications if you're not taking some kind of medication.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like
I
taking
mean,
medication to kind of manage things?
I mean, I think it's a good idea if so. I'm one person who will like not take pain medication always because I was taught to
Mm-hmm.
be very conservative with that for good reason. You should not overdo it. But like my
Yeah.
friends have had to like pull me aside, like if you're hurting, you're allowed to take pain medication. It's not
Yeah.
a moral failing or a bad thing. It's not going to be bad for you. Like don't take a like overdo it, but you're allowed to have two ibuprofen instead of one. And I'm like, it took me a while, but no, I know. Yeah, it turns out doesn't do nearly as much.
Yeah.
But no, I think people don't realize if you have something like that's just interfering with life, it's such a relief when we've got modern medicine that can help with that. And it's
Absolutely.
especially when you're a teenage girl, I think it can be really embarrassing. And when, like, obviously your male classmates are going to notice something's up and you don't want to talk about that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I have to go home because of my period. And they'll be just making jokes all day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do appreciate that once we're adults, discourse has gotten more open about this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Teenage
Absolutely.
boys are probably going to teenage boy, but
I
yeah.
can imagine how it might even affect you being in like an all male team or having a male manager, and you
Yeah.
just have a really intense month that time, and it's like, how do I even bring this up? Do you work with a lot of men in your zoo, and how do you kind of manage those experiences if that ever comes up, even though you're on the birth control
Yeah,
right
it
now?
hasn't really come up for me. I only actually work with a couple guys. I think we're two-thirds female at my zoo.
Oh wow.
Um, and it's a small zoo, so it's not a lot of men. I mean, I think most of them I'd be comfortable saying that. I feel like a lot of them are my generation and we're just more open, willing to, talk about that sort of thing. I think maybe the older generation, I would just like let them know I'm not feeling very well today, rather than bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I very much think it's a generational thing. Older
Totally.
generations did not get taught as much about it in school. So there are stories you hear about like congressmen who were like, "Well, if you're bleeding, can't you just not do that for a couple hours?" And we're like,
Oh
"No,
wow, how
that's
interesting.
yeah."
I've never
Like
heard that.
yeah, you read some interesting stories about like people who've had to like tell their older bosses like it hurts a lot. It's not just I'm having my period and I'm emotional and no, we can't pause it. We can't just pause it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, just pause what you're doing and
Yeah,
just
just
do your job, and then you can kind
yeah.
of hit on afterwards, like once the
Yeah.
job is done,
Yeah,
right?
do it when you like why are you doing it during work hours? Education is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you still get those same cramps with this
They're
current
not as bad.
birth control you're on right now?
They're not nearly as bad. Like there'll be
Mm-hmm.
occasionally I'll have a bad month, but even my bad
Mm-hmm.
month is not as bad as my bad months used to be.
Nice,
So
nice. And I'm sure you have to do like a lot of uphill work and like lifting and things. So
lots of lifting.
having
Yeah.
that must be a tremendous relief to kind of manage symptoms better.
Yeah, it
Right?
definitely is.
Very interesting. And we still on the topic of health. I know you mentioned earlier that you had a lot of chronic illness and kind of challenges with your health when you were starting off, including ADHD. What challenges has the ADHD and other chronic illnesses presented in your personal and professional life that affect you even to this day?
I mean, the big thing was my teenage years starting from age 12 through
Mm-hmm.
my late 20s, I had chronic illness that was exacerbated by ADHD and depression, so that even if I was feeling well, it was hard to function for other reasons. I lost my social network at the end of high school and I felt very isolated for a long time, and that did not help. And
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of feelings of failure, even though a lot of it was, I'm too sick to go to class on all these days, and you end up failing that semester, and those feelings just are, rough. That feeling of failure and not giving myself grace for that. And luckily I have a great social network now and wonderful people around me. And when I graduated, I was turning 30 at the same time, and I felt like I know everybody does at different paces, but it felt to me like I hadn't even stopped trying and then come back to school later. I'd been trying the whole time, and the health was just so bad. So I wasn't even going to celebrate either of those. And I had some wonderful people being like, you achieved something, and it's okay that you weren't on the same timeline. And yeah, it was very hard decade for me. And then one of the results was also, which I only just really, I've been going to PT for a broken ankle, and I realized when I talked to the PTs how much those teenage years when I was sick, all my muscles like basically atrophied because I was in bed and not leaving the house for months at a time. And so it is harder now for me to keep up sometimes on the physical work. So even though I've gotten a lot stronger, I basically had, I don't know, a stunted beginning. Like it's like a kid's growth gets stunted, but for me it was for muscular strength and lung capacity. So, which actually made me feel a little bit better when I heard it, because it did take me a while to get my zoo muscles, as we call them, where like everybody else is like, after a couple months, oh yeah, I can lift this. And I've struggled for a couple of years, probably the first 2 years. So it was nice to know that like, I'm not just weak. Stuff happened in my youth that affected that.
That sounds really tough to just kind of take all that in and accept it for yourself. Because when you're talking about dealing with these feelings of failure and I'm not good enough, when it's really tied to your health condition, but your brain is telling you something completely different, and then you're talking about, well, how long did it take you to finish your college? That you were saying it took you a long time. I'm curious, how long did it take you?
11 years.
11 years?
Yeah.
And you said you didn't even take like I forget what they call it, but there's like a special break you can take in between.
Yeah, I mean, I was only going part-time ever.
Okay.
So that was one thing. And another thing was I transferred colleges several times, including coming over from the East Coast, and just not everything always transfers. So that set me back. But even though I had all these mitigating circumstances, my brain can be mean to me. I think all of our brains can be mean to us sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so it felt like personal failing.
Yeah. And how did you, well, let me ask you this instead. What helped you in overcoming that? You said 10 or 13 years? I forget.
11
sorry,
years
11.
of college.
Okay, 11 years. So totally off. Okay, so 11 years of college, and you're seeing, I can imagine, you're seeing people come and go, like open door, closed door. You must be feeling, okay, when is it going to be my turn? Why is it taking me so long? How come I'm not getting there yet? And at the same time, you're trying to move forward. What helped you to keep moving forward when these thoughts of self-doubt and failure just came, and dealing with the illness and the health at the same time, just trying to hold yourself up together, for God's sake? Like mentally and physically, emotionally. What helped you through all of that?
I would say, honestly, my social network, once I developed one, it took me a little bit. And the years where I had none, like I had family.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to make friends because I was going part-time where everyone else was living in the dorms.
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing them as much. I wasn't there on campus outside of my class hours. So it was very hard to make friends. And I made some at a Renaissance festival. And one of those people is now my partner of 14 years. And
congratulations.
Some of the others are my best friends. And it was having people to give you reality checks of, you are trying, and we see you trying. That's helpful. People who are just loving and supportive. That helped a lot. I have also been doing therapy recently, and that's helping me process a lot of the remaining emotions of I didn't do good enough. And I got the achievement, but it was so late, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, totally. And therapy for like dealing with your thoughts and emotions, not like physical therapy type stuff. Okay. And how has that changed your perspective since you've been working with a therapist?
It's helped a lot with processing. We're doing EMDR therapy specifically, and I didn't know if I believed that was going to work, but it definitely worked for me. And it's just,
wait a minute. What's EMDR?
Okay,
fill me in.
It is a therapy where you use kind of bilateral brain stimulation while you're processing thoughts.
Okay.
And I should know all the science behind it because I went over it and I am kind of blanking and I don't even
That's
remember what
okay.
the acronym is, and I'm so sorry. But I don't know if it's necessarily all the bilateral brain stimulation, because you can do it by tapping and by looking at a moving thing, and by I have a sound that goes back and forth. And I'm sure that does have a difference because they explained it to me, and it like taps into pathways in your brain. The other part of it is just you are sitting and reflecting on things and making connections, and your therapist is checking in periodically with what are you seeing, what are you recognizing. And I'd never wanted to sit with my feelings of failure before because that hurts and that's uncomfortable. But by doing so, I was able to come to peace with a lot of things, and just was able to find that grace for myself that I've been lacking for so long.
Yeah.
Instead of shoving that voice in the back of my head that says nobody likes you or you're a failure, you like look at it and be like, why do I think this? How is it not true? Where did this stem from? It's just been immensely helpful for me.
I can imagine. And just knowing what you've discussed with us today, right? Like about your different illnesses and having ADHD and dealing with failure and all these other negative emotions, so to speak. It sounds like, okay, yeah, people who are not well would have these kinds of issues, but in reality, we all have these. It's just maybe easier to turn it off, or it doesn't take as much effort, perhaps. Yeah. But I know so many people, so many women, for example, who are mothers and others are caregivers, and they'd feel like, okay, like my kid fell and they got hurt and they started crying, or a tooth chipped, and it's my fault. I failed as a parent. And I can't make it better. I can't take the pain away. Or as a caregiver, you forgot to give the medication on time. Now their pain symptoms have amplified. You can't do anything about it, right? You can't reverse the clock. And so you start feeling like, okay, I messed up. But then you don't even want to process why you're feeling that in the first place. You're just like, turn it off and just distract yourself. Okay, well, let me focus on the next thing that I have to do for this person I'm caring for. Let me focus on getting the next meal or getting my child to bed because that's what's next in their routine or whatever it is. And even if you're not a caregiver or a parent, you might even feel that on your own at work, like, oh, I messed up.
Yeah.
My boss is upset. And then you're just like, okay, well, let me focus on the next best thing so I can make them happy again. So you just totally disregard whatever you were feeling.
Yeah.
And instead of processing them, but when you were just talking about it, it sounded like, hey, that's so beneficial.
It is. I mean, I think talk therapy can be just as beneficial too, because I think by ourselves, we don't want to think about it. We don't want to talk about it. It is uncomfortable. It hurts. We messed up. And so like we hide it in ourselves in like a dark corner, and then our brain's like, hey, you remember this thing? And it's those things where you like years later like, oh God, I don't want to think about that still because it's just been bottled up. So I think, yeah, I'm just a big proponent of therapy for just about everyone. I mean,
it's so awesome.
Just understanding the human experience. You need sometimes to talk to other people and realize that you're not broken or alone, and therapy is really good for that.
Absolutely. And not just understanding, but time to heal, right? Like understand, process, and heal. So you can move forward, right? And it's like a complete process that you have to complete that cycle in order to really move forward. Wow. Thank you so much for diving into that. And, speaking of failure, since we're on that topic, what is one of the biggest setbacks that you faced in pursuing your career, and how did you overcome that?
I think, well, that's a hard one. I mean, I think it's still a process. I still make mistakes sometimes, and that is very difficult for me personally. And I am always looking to be better and do better and learn from my mistakes and be a better caregiver to my animals and a better educator. So I think my ongoing struggle is, as I said, giving myself grace is hard, and I have been starting to get better at that. I feel like getting the job I have, I almost lucked into because I did the internship and they were looking for seasonal help right after that. And after that, they had an opening. So I feel incredibly lucky getting to where I was. And now I feel almost like I need to prove myself more because of that. Like, make sure that, like, I want you to know you didn't just hire me because I was there at the right time. I'm a hard worker and I want to do the best job I possibly can.
Are you still feeling some of that? That I have to prove myself that...
Yes.
It wasn't just luck of the draw for me.
Yeah. That's something I am working on.
Where do you think that comes from? Like, do you hear feedback from people you work with, or do you think it's like something else? It's not from people?
I think everybody makes mistakes sometimes, and sometimes it's on the job, and I internalize them a lot. And I don't know if I do that too much or just enough, because I know that drive to learn from your mistakes and do better, that's a healthy thing. So yeah, I don't necessarily know where it comes from that I...
How comfortable would you be in sharing one of those thoughts you had recently about you made a mistake and you started to internalize it? And maybe we can work through it.
When I was a fairly new keeper, there were times that I did not check locks that I should have, and that haunts me. So I'm always very recently, I guess the past year, I've almost become a little obsessive with it. Like I will go all the way to the other end of the zoo to make sure I have closed a lock, which is a good thing. It is that is not a mistake you want to make, but yeah, that was hard when I was making those mistakes, because I knew I could do better, and I was just so disappointed in myself.
It sounds like you're really hard on yourself, Becky. I wish we had like a coaching session for this, because we could totally dive in.
We could definitely. There's a lot. Yeah, I mean, I hesitate. I think you're right in general. Yes. But I also don't want to like downplay, like, oh yeah, but leaving the lock unlocked wasn't a big deal, because it is, because people, we have guests that could go into places that are unlocked, and sometimes they do. So it's a big deal, and I don't want to downplay that is a bad mistake to make at a zoo, but I do internalize, and I will agonize over things for a long period of time.
In what ways have you experienced discrimination or prejudice in life or your career?
I think honestly I've been fairly lucky in that regard. In not my current job, but past jobs, there have definitely been usually older males, often older white gentlemen, who I have definitely felt like being young or being female was just automatically had another layer of, you got to prove yourself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but that has not been the majority of my experience, and at my zoo, I have not felt that. So it helps that most of us are women. I think I think the zoo world's pretty evenly split, probably. My zoo just happens to have more women than men. I haven't faced any discrimination.
And that past experience that you were talking about, where it's like being a woman or being younger meant you had to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Like, could you talk to us a little bit more about that experience, about what made you start feeling that? Like, what did they do or say, that made you feel that way?
It just seemed like when it came to like people my age who were male, got more like friendly chatter from the bosses, whereas the women got more like scrutiny. And maybe that was a misperception from me, because they knew how to talk to guys and they didn't know how to talk to women, so it just felt like a different vibe. But I also just know that it's not uncommon that people have preconceptions about gender that interfere with seeing actual results. So they think like their work ethic or their intelligence or like their hobbies are a certain way because of the gender, and they'll prejudge people on that, which is something that I'm sure that both genders are subjected to. But I can only speak to my experience, and it definitely felt, and it was not systemic in my cases. I felt like it was always certain individuals and never my environment as a whole, and I felt lucky for that.
It's an interesting point you brought up. So it's like it's not just a group of people or like people from a specific gender who made you feel that way, but it could have just been more individualized.
Yeah.
And it could have been more personality based, and it happened to be a Caucasian white male. And it's funny how we start to create these messages in our head about all white males who work in the zoo are this way and they're going to treat me this way. And it's not, I don't want to say that it's wrong to think that way, because our brains are designed to protect us. So it's like it's just your brain's natural instinctive way to, I need to protect myself from these kinds of people. And so we start programming our thoughts that way. But sometimes, like you're saying, like, I don't know that it was actually the case, or they just knew how to talk to the men better. Maybe it was that. But I'm not here, like, I'm not saying like I'm invalidating your experience. I'm just trying to see how can we look at it a different way. And I was just more curious about instances where this actually happened. Because, when you think about working with animals, it's like, okay, it doesn't feel like a male or a female could do it better. It feels like you both could just do it equally right.
I mean, sometimes with the physical aspects, there is still, okay, I will say that. There has at my zoo been times where like they needed somebody strong, and so they would ask the males. And in some cases that is valid. In like if the female is smaller in stature or the guy is is just, we know he's stronger, so like if you're restraining a large animal, for example, and you want to minimize harm to people and animals, but it's then when you notice that experienced females who've been there for a while are like, they automatically call over the new guy because they're assuming that guy's going to be stronger. And I don't think that is like an intentional form of discrimination. I think that is such a societal thing, and just, sure, I'm not going to say it doesn't have any biological basis, but also you need more than strength when you're handling animals. So you really should maybe go for the people with experience who have done it before thinking that's a big guy. He can I should
take
call
care
him.
of the situation.
Yeah. So, and I will again say that doesn't happen very often, and it is usually an older generation that I see that from. So, which makes me think we are moving in better directions.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's, as you're mentioning with the whole like generational thing, it seems that we're becoming more open-minded to different perspectives and different ways of doing things and wanting to be more understanding and adaptable. So that, I think that comes with it as well. And it's not to say that working with older generations is impossible, but I think in younger generations having those qualities, we should try to be more understanding and adaptable for them, right? So like if you know they're really not going to be able to change, what can you do to make it like, to kind of like reduce the tension and be more adaptable so that there is more collaboration and understanding if they're not capable, but you are. So I think you kind of like reclaim that power to empower the whole situation of people instead of expecting.
Of course.
Within
reason, of course. If somebody's going to be a bigot, I'm like, no, you've been on this earth long enough to know that that's not okay, and you can go sit in your corner. Yeah, no, if it's like I mentioned before, where I thought it might be the individual just, they were joking around with the guys and being kind of stiff and stern with the girls, might have just been social awkwardness with which gender. So I try to keep that in mind. If people aren't being, abusive or toxic or hateful, I do try to keep that in my mind. Because I mean, I know I as a neurodivergent person have, my struggles as well. So I try to think about what their struggles might be that are making them like act in a way that I wouldn't expect or understand initially.
Absolutely. And how did you, I don't think I asked you this, but how did you navigate those situations where you felt like the girls are being scrutinized and the males are like spoken to nicely and they were joking and all? How did you navigate all that path?
It was never to the point where like there was preferential treatment or people were being penalized. It was very much more of a social dynamic. So I don't feel like I needed very much to navigate it. And it could have easily gone a different way, I think. Like if people are in the workplace and if women are like not getting equal opportunities, equal treatment, with equal expectations, then definitely that needs navigating. And in my case, it just felt like everybody else at this company is fine with me and tells me I'm doing a good job. And this one guy is, he might hate women. He might be socially awkward, but I'm just not going to interact with it.
Yeah.
So, but that is privilege again, because not all women are in that situation. Sometimes they deal with a lot worse.
Yeah. When you just said that, when you decided I'm not going to interact with him, it reminded me of a conversation I had with somebody in academia, and they're like one of the associate deans or directors, like a really top leadership position in academia. And she was telling me how when you get to the top, you have to deal with a lot of politics. And sometimes you're going to interact with people who you don't like. And I said, well, how do you deal with that? What do you do to navigate the situation? She's like, well, I have the privilege of knowing who I'm going to have a meeting with and who's going to be in that meeting. And so if it's a group meeting, I'll opt not to be at that meeting. I'll avoid and limit my interactions with that person if I know that I'm not getting along with them, because in the end, it's not going to help me show up better and do my work better. It's going to affect me negatively. So I'll try to do whatever I can to move away from it and I'll ask someone else to step in. And she told me she even had a list of people, like would make note of who to actually avoid, like doing collaboration with, the projects with. And it's not that you have like a blacklist, but when I heard that, I said, hey, that makes a lot of sense, because you're trying to really tap into your own mental, emotional energy and use it in the right way. And instead of trying to fix the situation with that person and you're butting heads every time, why not just try to get the work done without that in the process? And so it just made a lot of sense when you just said that, like, well, I'll just avoid it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually, it sounds like a really nice strategy just to maintain the peace.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if that is an option for people,
Yeah.
if like the interactions are just annoying you, if you can stop the interactions, do it.
How has that helped you when you've ever tried to like stop the interactions?
I am. Oh, now I'm thinking about dating. Well, in this instance, fine. I didn't work closely with him, and I kind of just ignored him, and he didn't again seem to like interacting with the women much anyway, and it didn't affect my job to not engage with him. So it wasn't. Yeah, it was all right.
It's just life goes on.
Yeah.
I see him in passing. We don't talk to each other. We're good.
Yeah.
Is that what it was for you?
It was. Yeah.
And you know, that's interesting. Like, aside from that, I'm curious about, in terms of identity and belonging, how has your work with animals helped you find your strength and your sense of purpose and belonging in the work that you do?
Well, it's very rewarding work. So in terms of a sense of purpose, I feel very lucky. I mean, lots of people have jobs. Sometimes they like their jobs, sometimes they don't like their jobs, but it's not every job that feels that rewarding. But and that really helps give you a sense of purpose. Like I'm here to make sure that these animals get the best possible life. And it is very important to me. And it helps when you can actually see that come into practice. Like the alpacas, I gotta say, they're kind of indifferent to you. So I can't necessarily gauge, but like I give the right enrichment like objects to certain animals, and you can see them engaging and being active, and you've done a good job. So that's really pleasing. Actually, I said to my coworker just a couple days ago, if I could make all the animals here as happy as I just made that wolf by giving him cologne sprayed on hay, I would do this job for free.
Cologne sprayed on hay?
I would live. I just live under a bridge, so I didn't have to pay rent and do this job for free. Yeah, so it's nice when and I don't want to like anthropomorphize, because we should be careful not to be like, oh, that bird's feeling this sort of way right now, because they have emotions, but we can't necessarily make them equivalent to human emotions. But also, it's pretty obvious when they are like running around and rolling and things. Like, okay, I made that. I think I made that one happy. So
you haven't mentioned this, but I'm going to bring it up because I have seen you in action with these particular animals, and it's phenomenal. You work particularly well and make porcupines very, very happy.
I try to, yeah.
How did you manage to just kind of create such a warm environment for such an animal that could be potentially dangerous when people see them for the first time?
Well, I think it helps that they probably think I'm another porcupine. This is my theory, at least, because they know me very well, and they know I bring them food, so they like me for that. But they will still get something moody or territorial or grumpy, and when they do, they headbutt me a little bit, just my knees, and I am very but I'm so grateful for that, because it's a porcupine, so if it was trying to like defend itself, it would use the other end and it would be bad. So it's very gratifying that I'm like, okay, you're mad at me because I came into your barn and you want me out of your barn, but you like me enough that you're just going to headbutt me, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I think having animals engaged, like being able to see that they are engaged with their environment or what you're giving them or with people, that is the height of good enrichment. You don't want them to be bored. That's the worst thing. And so we're always trying to find that way of enriching. And sometimes they're good on their own. They're like, I don't need you, human, which that doesn't mean we don't try. We still try, absolutely. But then you find ways and things that they will engage with in positive ways, and that helps you make that bond.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do and creating this environment for people of all ages to come and learn and enjoy the zoo. And when you have very polite people that are working there, it just makes the experience of going even better. So thank you for being that person, and thanking for all the care that you do and the work that you do at the zoo.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're coming to the end of our time together, and I wanted to close it out with one thing. You've had a very rough start, so to speak, from the average person for your career. What does your life look like when you decide to retire?
Well, that's a hard one. I think about that occasionally. I don't know. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's totally okay.
I imagine I'll still have animals in my life, even if I don't know if I mean pets, or if I would like have hobbies of pet sitting or I would volunteer. I think I would love to volunteer. I was a volunteer docent at the Seattle Aquarium for several
What's
years.
a docent?
And I loved it. It's somebody who is basically there to answer questions and keep an eye on the guests and the animals, make sure there's not any negative interactions happening. So all the volunteers at my zoo that you see just standing in different areas, we call them docents. And then
I thought it was actually the person's name.
A lot of people do. But yeah, no, it's a position. Museums have them too, where you can just go ask them questions about the art and the exhibits. So it's, but that's a great way of still engaging with both people and animals. And I definitely recommend people look into volunteering at their local zoos and aquariums if they are interested in that kind of work, because it's a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds great. So thank you for that information. And listeners, if you're interested in learning more, Becky, what's the best way to reach you and get in contact with you if listeners want to engage?
I'm on Instagram, BEKI5. That's probably the best way.
All right. And I'll drop that one in the show notes for you guys so you can grab that. And, guys, it's been such a great time talking with Becky and, having you guys engage with us in this conversation. But as always, we've come to the end of our time together. So just want to make sure you subscribe to this podcast before you go. Give me a follow on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you have any requests for future topics or speakers, you can send me an email at Raihana@rawcoaching.com. And I'll drop that in the show notes for you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Becky.